time, weather.
Now for the Forge Podcast. Question for you. What's the power of your testimony if it's never shared? This is the Forge Podcast. Boomerang, or they're like, people love it for social, so.
That's awesome.
All right, let's see. Jason Belcher.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to the first ever Forge Podcast.
Dude, it's a joy to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have spoken with you in passing, and so this is an honor for me.
Yeah,
I'm excited to just pick your brain about the Forge. I mean, the Forge, just in my tenure, been there 4 or 5 years on and off, real solid the last two plus.
Yeah.
But just to see the growth has been incredible, and it's not just attendance growth. To me, and you can speak to this better, it's real life change growth. Totally. It's guys coming and seeing change in themselves, wanting change, and then coming to the Forge and being fed. So, talk to me about. Just talk to me about that. I led you into something, so get me out of that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting because the Forge has been evolving. When I first came here about 3.5 years ago, we called it Men's Tuesday Nights, MTN. And there's a legacy of men's ministry here at our church, which not every church has, but there's quite a legacy. But as it goes, it's ebbed and flowed. And then in particular, it's always kind of been this smaller ministry in our very large church. Right? You can look around and say, all these women are engaged, all these women are coming to Bible studies, thousands of women in our church, and there may be 100 men or 50 men over at this little Men's Tuesday Night deal. And so over the last maybe 5 to 7 years, that's really been changing. Now, we still have a long way to go, but like you said, as far as growth, like we've seen something that I can only describe as renewal, revival. Like God is doing a work in our church. So the brand Forge came about right when I came here. I wasn't a part of that decision. I kind of inherited it. But I love the image, right? Because if you think about what is a forge? Forge is a place where a blacksmith goes and heats up this fire, this hearth, right? And then gets it super warm and then takes raw materials, puts it in there, puts it under pressure, puts it under heat. And now there's malleable. Now you can make a sword. Now you can make a tool. And so that image, we've just taken that on as kind of what we're trying to do with the men. We just believe at its core, Paul talks about in Ephesians, he says, we are his workmanship.
Right.
We're the masterpiece is another translation. And so our belief is we get men in that room. We're going to turn up a little bit of heat. We're going to bring some accountability. We're going to bring some challenge. We're going to bring purpose. And as those things bear down on someone's life, now they're malleable. Now they can be shaped into something. And it's not we're not there to form them into, our image. We're there to help them form into Christ's image.
Right. And
so there's already a trajectory. We believe that what we've created is an environment. That's really, when I say what is Forge, it's an environment. It's a place you can come to. It's a noun. Come to Forge.
I did a little bit of a dive on two things. One, the Forge, the definition of to be forged, and then the scripture, iron sharpens iron. I've known it my entire life, right? Iron sharpens iron. Always, it's lost some of its meaning just because it's become a cliche.
Right.
So I dove into that and what it takes to forge and for iron to actually sharpen other iron. It has to be, like you said, heated up, not just heated, not just put in the microwave for 20 seconds. I mean, we are breaking down the structure of the metal, smashing it, cooling it, coming back, heating it up, smashing it. I mean, it's a process. It is a real process. To be able to sharpen iron is not just me to come hang out with you. It is to do the deep heat of life and to really be all in with that. I mean,
and that phrase that you just used, this word deep heat of life, and that's one other angle that Forge, I think, captures, which is sometimes that heating process is already happening outside of church, outside your life. You're undergoing some kind of pressure. Your marriage is falling apart. You feel purposeless and lost. You hit a wall in your career. You're dealing with unemployment. You got a sick kid. Life kicks us in the face. So sometimes that heating process is already underway, and we just feel like we're under all this pressure. And another way of saying is you're already ready. You're ready for change. When you come in the doors, so if a guy is dealing with some serious issues in his life and he comes in our doors, we're going to wrap our arms around him and say, we know the solution. We know the answer for you. You're ready for change in your life. Right? I've got a person in my life right now who's got some real challenges at home with his kids. He's super distracted and just feels and depressed and disconnected. But most of all, he's isolated. Like, he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have any men around him. And this guy's with extensive military background.
Yeah.
He's used to the band of brothers, and he's doing life alone right now. And man, this guy doesn't live locally. Otherwise, I'd get him here.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of men, right? A lot of men are trying to do life on their own. And we one of the things we fundamentally believe is you start opening up to other men. That's so countercultural these days to really open up your heart and your soul, the deepest parts of you. But when you do that, not just to your brothers, but then you begin to let the Lord do something, that's when you're ready for change.
Isolation is so destructive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think isolationism can, if that's even a word, I think a lot of problems in our life can be pointed back to maybe the start of being isolated and not having somebody to check you or to check in on you or to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Let's go to, you said one thing, you said there's a big if in getting guys to Forge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of isolation, right?
Yep.
And there in that isolation comes condemnation.
Yeah.
Right? There's isolation. I'm by myself. What is this group going to do? I'm not going to go hang out with a bunch of dudes. Like, keeps you isolated. Then you said, we want to once you come through those doors, we want to wrap our arms around you, which we do.
Yeah.
How do you get guys going from isolation to walking through those front doors? Because that's a tough mantle to cross.
Yeah.
It is.
It is. Yeah. I mean, part of it is spreading the word. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here, is we want guys to know that not only is this an option, but it's a place, like we want to set the table for you. We want people to understand. We want guys to recognize that there's a space for you, and that the worship center on Sunday morning or tuning in online once in a while isn't enough. It's not going to cut it. Like, you need to move more from information to like real life relationships. I mean, that is, why did God set up the community of faith the way that he did? He set it up so that we do it in relationship. I have this phrase I say all the time, that the gospel moves at the speed of relationship. So for guys that are isolated right now, we want you to hear loud and clear, like, come to Forge. Like, even if that might require every ounce of strength you have left, but if you can get in the door, it's like putting yourself on a moving sidewalk. Like, you're going to start moving towards change in your life.
Yep.
That's because God's Spirit is there and a community of brothers are there to receive you. So that's part of it. But there's no way around it too. Men just need to be challenged to say, you got to get out of yourself. You got to get out of your own mind. Sometimes we're our own best enemy. Right. And you've just got to take that risk. And it is a risk to open up your life to other people. But sometimes guys just need to hear, like, you need to step past that. One of the things we talk about at Forge, specifically for married guys, is we say, one of our intangibles, one of the things that we would know we're hitting the mark, is that if the church for some reason was like, all of men's ministry, Forge is gone, they would say, we would see a mutiny from our wives, because the impact on the family and the impact on the men is so great that the wives say, you have to keep this going. So I think sometimes the real barrier for guys is they're working all the time. They maybe they have a small hobby. They play around a golf here and there. Right. They're trying to take care of the kids. Life is full, and so one barrier to coming to Forge is I can't pull away another night in my week. I can't leave my family behind. But we would say this is a worthwhile investment. This is an investment that's going to pay all these dividends, not just in your immediate family and your marriage with your kids, but for generations. And so sometimes we've just got to actually own that and walk in that and show up.
I love that. It is an investment into generations. I don't want to go down that road. We could, but it's awesome. Yeah. I do want to hear a story of somebody that, you don't have to use names, but somebody that had a hard time, isolationist, again, reusing that word, was in isolation, found the Forge and found transformation. Yeah. Anything come to mind? Anybody?
I mean, it's one of our most common stories. I mean, it's not a lot of men that have had a lot of experience outside of like athletics and military. Not a lot of men have had deep camaraderie in their faith journey. So it's a more common story than not for guys to come in and say, this is totally new for me. I would say, I'll start with myself. Like, if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be working in men's ministry, I would have probably laughed. I would have said, that's not really for me. Right. Like, here's the thing, man. I like being outside. I like mountain biking, backpacking. I'm an outdoors type guy. So when it comes to church and how churches tend to market men's ministry, a lot of times it resonates with me. But I remember I used to live in San Diego, and I lived in this very hipstery part of town, and our church that was there.
What part?
That was in North Park.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember our church did a men's, they called it a men's advance because men's don't retreat. And the average, and it was a weekend.
Really?
Yeah,
Is
so
that
they
the
did.
line?
And they did. And the
'Cause
whole
men don't
promo,
retreat.
the whole promo for it was like, we're going to shoot guns, we're going to eat bacon, we're going to be men. And I remember thinking like, a lot of that sounds pretty fun to me, but I'm looking around the room and a lot of these like artists and creative types and guys that all of a sudden are being put outside of a box in masculinity.
Yeah.
Because that's a very cultural definition of masculinity. Those things have masculine components to them, no doubt, but biblical masculinity isn't defined by cultural characteristics. You look at a guy like David, David in the Old Testament. He's like a warrior. He is those things, but he's a poet.
Yeah.
He played the harp, he sang. So there's a really wide range. You look at Christ and what he fulfilled in being truly masculine. One of the verses that we use that's kind of in the background, the DNA of our men's ministry, comes from Paul's exhortation at the end of Corinthians. And he says that we are to be watchful, to stand firm in the faith, to act like men, be strong, do everything in love. And some translations, instead of saying act like men, say be courageous. So that why would they translate that in some cases act like men, in some cases be courageous? Well, in the ancient world, that Greek word that they use, andrizomai, that word meant to have courage. It was kind of like, imagine like going up to the edge of like a cliff, and andrizomai, to have courage, means to jump. And so they would attribute that to masculinity. So what Paul's doing, as he's exhorting the whole community, the men and the women in Corinth, he's saying, act like a man, be strong. But then he defines that, because just like in my little example of my church in San Diego, we can get so caught up in defining strength and masculinity based on our culture's use of that. We have to stay in Scripture, and this is our heart at Forge. Paul defines that. He says we are to be watchful. Mm-hmm. So the role of the men is to be looking across the landscape for where's God at work and where's the enemy at work, and are we looking out for our families and our city and our people around us. And he says we are to stand firm in the faith. We have to have a backbone that we should be, that at the very core of us is our love and devotion to Christ. And then that's when he says to be courageous, so to exhibit that kind of strength through courage, to be strong. But then what I love is he says to do everything in love. Mm-hmm. That's how he's defining. That's how we define what it means to be a man. So, I know we've departed a little bit from your question. I'm going to circle back in a second about from isolation.
Thank God.
From isolation. So you get a pastor talking, man. This is what we do. But man, that is.
How do you spell that Greek word?
Andrizomai. Oh gosh, yeah. Let me break that down for you. I'll have to draw it. My Greek.
Could you draw it? Could you?
I probably could write it for you.
Oh,
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah. But that's what we're after. That's what we're about. And so where I'm going with all this, a lot of men in the church haven't had that experience. A lot of times, in church history, a lot of men have been heroes of the faith. But I would say in our modern secular age, somewhere along the way, like it just became more normative for women to be spiritual leaders, for women to show up to church, and men hang in the background, and we rationalize it. Well, I'm taking care of my family by providing for them, putting food on the table.
Right.
What actually is needed is men and women, but what we're here, our mission is to wake up men and to say, you have a purpose, God has a plan for your life, be strong, andrizomai, step up, man up. And
so
lead.
that's great. How do we, that transitions perfectly.
Yeah.
How do we what is your vision for doing that in the Forge?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 250 to 300 attentive minds. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Which is awesome compared to where it was 5 years ago,
Totally.
but it's still a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Based on the population of this church. So what's your vision?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
The way the church has always operated.
I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, we're learning it. We're on our knees, right? That's our starting point. We are a praying community. Our leadership team, we call it our vision team, that works in concert with our pastors. We're on our knees asking the Lord all the time about how to reach more men, because I think all of us at different times hit our walls. But this is what I would say. The church has always operated at this strategy of relationship to relationship. If you think about, I just did some teaching on evangelism. I'll use this as an illustration. Why is it the case that God, if he wanted to broadcast the gospel, the good news that God has come in the person of Christ to reign on earth for all time, and you're welcome into the kingdom through the sacrifice of Jesus, why did he bring that in, basically 33 AD, when he could have brought it today in the internet age with TikTok and gotten that message worldwide? Well, as we see in the Gospels, crowds hear this message and they don't respond. What they actually see, the Gospel is a message of love, and love is felt. It's meant to be experienced relationally. And so God has always unfolded for 2,000 years. It started with Jesus and 12 men, really 3, and those people have changed the world all the way to today. We're all here because of that legacy of somebody told somebody, and they experienced the love of Christ, right? So when you say, how do we do that? How do we go out there and reach men? I think we have to do it at a relational level.
Correct.
And so
one guy at a time.
One guy at a time.
Yeah.
And so this is what this looks like for us, right? Our ministry, if you were a new guy and you walk in the Forge, what are you going to see? You're not going to see it built around one person. You're not going to see like one compelling teacher charisma. I like to think I'm a good teacher of God's word, but it's not built around my gifting or any particular person's gifting. It's meant to be a community. So we say we're a community of men. There's kind of 3 pillars of what we're about. We're a community of men who are radically devoted to Christ and actively engaged in building the church. So it's those 3 things that's our strategy. How do we do this? That's our vision. That's what we want to see. We want to be a community of men where you can belong before you believe. You can be received no matter what's going on in your life without judgment. You're gonna experience guys just sitting alongside you. If your life's in a dumpster fire or you're on a mountaintop, we're gonna be with you. We're gonna be a community. But we're not just a community that's a social club. We have a purpose, and that purpose is to become like Christ. So we want a devotion to Christ, but not just tepid or lukewarm devotion. We want radical devotion. And as guys get on fire for the Lord and he really gets a hold of their life and starts shaking them loose from the things that have been clogging up their life, sin struggles, internal beliefs about themselves, now we can step into our purpose, and that is to be actively engaged. So our whole vision, what are we here to do? We're here to activate. We want to see guys get off the bench and step into the game, to exercise the gifts that God's given them, to lead and serve their families, and to go reach other men. And I'm thinking, we got couple thousand guys that are hanging around our church that aren't coming to men's ministry. I'm thinking those guys, but there are many, many more men that are in the neighborhoods and the workplaces who are dealing with the same issues, but have no clue of the solution in Christ. So that's our approach. Like we can get the word out through publicity. We can do things like this. I love this. But fundamentally, what I want is you, Joe Nee, to go talk to your neighbor. I want you to go talk to a guy in the pew on Sunday morning and tell them about how God's working over here on Tuesday nights and why you should be a part of it.
I took a moment to look at our mission statement, radically devoted. I'm like, okay, what does radically mean? Yeah. Probably around the same time I did the Forge and the Iron Sharpens Iron. Let me deep dive into what am I really signing up for? And am I a participant in the process of being forged by Christ, by Jesus? Yeah. But the same thing, radically devoted, to obey every time when God tells me to do something is what I had written down.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's not easy. But what does radically devoted look like? And what does radically devoted look like? Because I sit there in Forge, I've sat there for a while now, and my question is, are we all radically devoted? We say the line. Yeah. Are we? Yeah. Or are we showing up and red dotting it and feeling a little bit better? It's a question. I mean, that's a question I think every person, every man in that room needs to answer. Right. Like, define radically. Yeah. And then you're repeating this. Are you radically devoted, or is there something that you need to ask God to help you change in your heart? So I throw that to you. What does radically devoted mean to you? Right. And if there is a guy like myself that might not be radically devoted right now, what advice would you have as pastor? Yeah. Well, think about it this way, Joe. When we say radically devoted, it's not to a cause, it's not to a mission, it's to a person and to a relationship. So we can draw a lot of parallels. A lot of times we hear the word radical and we hear that politically. We tend to think of, Marxism. We tend to think of whatever, some sort of political cause, radical terrorism, right? So that's often where we hear this word radical. We're repurposing that, and we're very intentionally linking it to a relationship. So let me put it this way. What does it look like to be radically devoted to your wife? You can be in love with her, you can be married to her, but a lot of folks over time, there's drift, and there's familiarity over time, just creates an environment where you're just kind of coexisting together. We don't want to coexist with Christ. Right. So what does radical devotion to a relationship look like? Well, there's a couple ways to maybe measure that or to be on the lookout. One is, how do you spend time? If you're not spending time with your spouse,
You're not demonstrating
Right.
any kind of devotion.
Yeah.
Right. So I think one dimension of that is, are you spending time with Jesus? Is that the person, like when you wake up? I was talking to our buddy Steve Heller. I was talking to him yesterday. He goes, when I wake up, I don't put my feet on the ground before I'm, before I talk to Jesus, before I start my day in dialogue with Christ.
Right.
That's a picture of radical devotion. It doesn't mean that you're just, we don't want to create a community of monastics that just go away and read their Bibles all day.
Right.
That's not ultimately good for the world if that was everybody. We all have specific vocations and roles to play that are active and present in the world, in the marketplace, in film, in the life of the church. We all have a place to do that. But I think it has to be connected relationally back to Jesus. He says in John 15, he talks about abide in me, like a vine. Like
Right.
That's where fruitfulness comes out of our life. So a lot of times we want to point to the fruit. We want to say am I demonstrating more of the fruits of the Spirit? Do I have more peace in my life? And we're kind of chasing after those, when in reality, that's the fruit. We should be chasing the relationship.
Right.
So we want to be radical with Christ. Now, one other example of that. I got a friend named Matt, comes to the Forge. If you hang around Matt, he's a big football type dude. You wouldn't necessarily look at him and say, that guy has a huge heart for prayer. But if you hang around with Matt, you're going to start praying. This guy loves to pray. And his vision for our city is that there's going to be a remnant, a coalition of guys that are going to start carving out time in their life to seek the Lord. Because wherever God has moved in powerful ways, we talk about the history of cult revival.
Yeah.
From Europe in the 1800s to the U.S. today, like wherever you're seeing extraordinary outpourings of the Holy Spirit, it's always started in prayer. So I think one expression, right, one devote would be like time, like you would spend with your wife. Another thing would be intimacy, and that comes in the prayer closet. That comes on your knees. So right now in the Forge, we're at a place where there are a growing coalition of men that are dedicating time to pray before Forge on Tuesday nights, and another group of men that are coming and praying on Thursday mornings at 6:30.
Oh, really?
Yep. So there's 2 spaces now that have gotten off the
cool.
ground.
Where's that?
It's in Rustin's old office. We turned it into a prayer room. So it's an open invitation. If you
With
want
a
to
big
get
old
up early.
painting of Rustin up on the wall,
It's not
my sheep.
Yeah. Well, we do like to say it's a pretty sanctified space in there. There's a lot of holy work that's been
Yeah.
done, and maybe a little bit of unholiness too. But Rustin's done. That's a special place to us.
Yeah, cool.
But we've got Tuesday nights we call it our boiler room.
How many people can that handle?
Tuesday nights can handle a lot.
No,
the Thursday morning's been tight. We've had 10, 11 guys in there, and it's getting snug. But we're gonna find a new room. That's our hope. We hope we outgrow it.
6:30 to 7.
6:30, 7:30. We go for an hour, and it's a specific type of prayer. It's not just come and pray for your grandma. That's important, but that we call that intercession. I was explaining to one of my friends, what we're here to do is pursue the presence. We're here to abide. We're here to waste time. It's a paradox because no time is wasted with God. But it feels that way. You show up before work at 6:30, and you're carving out this hour to close the door and just pray. But
it's a cliche for a reason. Like when you do something you love, you're not working.
Yeah.
Because you love it.
Yeah.
You might get paid for it, and it's what you do 9 to 5. But when it's wasting time is a great saying.
Totally.
Wasting time with God. It's like, I'd rather do nothing else. Like that's great.
Yeah.
I love this remnant idea, and let me see if I can piece my thought together.
Sure.
I have heard. We've got about 4 minutes.
Okay.
Before I just have to slate and we can start over or start again. But cameras turn off at 30 minutes.
Okay.
I've heard a few times, maybe more than a few, that the Forge is more of a hospital. The way people that don't attend Forge see the Forge as more of a hospital, and I don't need it. I'm not sick.
Yeah.
And that it bums me out a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, maybe you haven't come. But I've heard that from people that are not just nobodies.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love going there to get healed. I think everybody needs to start somewhere and to be restored.
Right.
And I think Forge, with your remnant idea, is starting to grow some real spiritual warriors in there to be able to move outside of just community and men, but go and take our stand against the devil's schemes, right?
Yep.
What is your vision for the remnant? Like people come, they get healed, they get restored at Forge, but to move out of that into leadership, into the leadership team, whatever it is. What is your vision for that? I'll leave it there.
Yeah, it's great.
Is that enough of a question?
Oh, it's
does
great.
that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. The hospital metaphor is has some problems in it, but in one sense, it's true. The church has always been seen as a hospital for hurting people. It's a place where you can come find healing. But let's run that metaphor through. If you have a broken femur, supposedly the worst break you can get in a bone, right? I just had a bike accident. I didn't break my femur, but I broke my shoulder, collarbone, and all these other things. So broken bones suck, but a femur break is supposed to be bad. If you broke a femur spiritually, like, you're gonna need some time to heal. If your life blew up, you nuked your marriage, you've got some serious thing you're dealing with. You need a place where you can come be unconditionally loved, and you can allow for a time and a season of healing. So in one sense, when people's perception of Forge or men's communities is that it's where the broken guys go, yeah, that is true. We want to be that.
Yep.
But if you, like, back to the medical metaphor, if after my bike accident, I was in the hospital 5 days. If I had stayed there 4 or 5 months, 6 months, a year, they'd be like, go. Like, you're wasting our resources. You need to get out. Like, there are other hurt people that need a space here.
Right.
Go find the hurting people, right? So I think the vision for what we're here to do is we have to start from the place that we're all broken. Like, every man that comes in the door, like any man who won't come because they say I'm not broken, that's actually an indication of their own spiritual pride and blindness. Yeah. We all have to come to a place before Christ where we go, dude, I'm so broken. I can see my sin issues. It doesn't have to be that you've nuked your life, but you have to allow the Spirit of God to reveal that you have brokenness, and that's what gets you in the door. But then once you discover that, one of God's greatest gifts, or not his gifts, it's who he is he will repurpose broken people to be a part of his healing. So then he'll say, maybe to take that metaphor stretch further, is like, go be on the paramedic team. Get out there and round up and be on the lookout for other hurting people around you and go minister to them. Like, you have a purpose. And actually, you don't have to get fully healed. You just need to get walking again.
Right.
And while that bone's resetting, you can go be a part of this. So what's the vision? This is why I talk about activation. It's that third pillar for us. It's to be actively engaged in building the church. And that's not one size fit all. That is God's unique design for your life, for my life, for the spiritual gifts he's given us. He's saying, I've given you so much. We're going to stand before him one day, and I think he'll say, like, how did you steward the gifts that I gave you? And so our vision is that we want to be an activating community. How do we do that? Well, we're partnered with a bunch of local ministries: House of Refuge, Transitional Housing Center, Teen Challenge, Addiction Recovery, The Rock, working with youth. We've got global projects. We've sent guys to Europe and to Slovakia. We've sent guys to Jordan. We're looking to send a team potentially this year into Istanbul. So we're going to provide you endless opportunities to get your feet wet, to get out there, and to find that you're going to discover so much healing and purpose when you get out of yourself and you start serving other people.
That's the activation you're talking about.
That's it.
Last thing I want to ask you about in all this stuff we've talked about is it's not possible until we find our identity in Christ.
Yeah.
Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's not a fair way to state that. But I want to talk about identity.
Yeah.
Because once you find who God created you to be, original design in the Freedom Book, but I think we have an identity problem in our country for sure. I mean, you said it earlier. It's like the provider is, why do I work 10, 12 hours a day? I'm giving you everything. I'm giving you what I as a father, what I as a husband am supposed to do and provide with money and finances and food and shelter. But that's become our identity.
Yeah.
It's become our identity. When I introduce myself to you, hey, I'm Joe. I do this, right? My identity is my employment, my trade.
Yeah.
Discovering your true identity in Christ is mind-blowing, but I mean the freest thing you could ever experience.
Right.
I want to hear your thoughts on original design, identity in Christ.
Yeah. I think for men, one of the hardest things is to disconnect from we are what we do. You hit the nail on the head, right? I think we are just trained and conditioned that way from the youngest of ages. And then that's just, you walk into a room, it's exactly that. My name is Jason, I'm this. Mm-hmm. And when we speak, like, we don't even really know how to, like, what the process is for decoupling that. But the biblical story has always said that God's intention is just to be with us. Like, that's the goal. So from the garden where he walked among us to revelation where he will dwell again, God on earth, his presence, no sun, no moon, no temple, because God's Spirit reigns with us. That's the whole biblical story, is that God is trying to just simply say, what I want is you. What I want is to be with you. I don't need you to do anything for me. I didn't create you just to get things done. You're not just my minions to execute my plans and visions in the world. He created us out of an overflow of love, and he wants us to be in relationship. So when we talk about identity, I mean, for men in particular, that's one of the hardest lessons to learn. And I'll be honest, like, I'm right there learning it. Like this fall for me, going through my bike accident, feeling like I was on the sideline, healing really slowly, losing my father. Like, I've just been in a season where what I put so much strength and identity in, of being this pastor and being out with my people and loving ministry, I've had to slow way down. And I'm that guy on Saturday when it's like, you know, the kids are resting or whatever, and I'm twiddling my thumbs like, what do? I feel anxious. I don't want to be alone with myself. I want to be out there doing things. But I think there's a lesson to be learned, and I think that's what men need, is to be pushed into. You are not valuable for what you produce. You're valuable to God because he created you, and you're valuable to him because what he actually wants is a return, a loving relationship. So God's designed us so that, like, you know, if we're like a cup, he's just pouring his love into us all the time, and it should fill us up, and then it just begins to spill out of our life. Like, it just flows in other people. But a lot of times we just poke holes in it, whether it's sin, unforgiveness, negative self-beliefs, not feeling we're worthy, and all that. God's love just spills in unhealthy ways. It doesn't come from an overflow. So the healthiest Christians I know, the people that I sort of look at and I want to be like, are the ones that have learned that being with Jesus is the end goal, and making that the highest priority of their life. And they create rhythms around that, rhythms of, you know, solitary prayer time, rhythms in community, and then just daily existence with God's presence. So what we want to do, I know that's a little abstract. You can't just figure that, as there's not just a formula for how to shift your identity. Right. But I think when you get around people, because this is where community comes in, what Satan's so good at, think about that little cartoon image of, you know, the angel and the demon. When the little Satan's on your shoulder, he'll just whisper stuff at you that's untrue. He's just the prince of lies. And he'll want to get you to believe things that aren't true about you, about who you are. Yeah. You're a terrible father. You're not
But they're
worthy.
Always based in a smidge of truth.
They are.
Right? Oh.
And so why we need community.
That's why it doesn't sound like it's the devil.
And it just gets louder, and we give it credence, and then we agree with it, and then all of a sudden we're believing these little lies become big parts of us. We need each other to remind us of this, what is true. Right. Because this is our answer. The scriptures tell us about who we are, about, you know, how God feels about us. One of the I talked about our prayer group, that Thursday morning prayer group in particular. I can't tell you how many times I go into that prayer time feeling like I'm not worthy to be here. I had this sin issue the night before. I was short with my wife or my daughter on the way in. I'm dealing with this issue with lust in my heart, whatever it may be, and I go, I'm not worthy to pray. Right? And so we need the community of faith to say, no. It says in Hebrews, draw near with confidence into the throne room of grace, not on my accolades, not on yours, but on what Christ has done. We need community to remind us of who we are. That's so much. That's why we talk about, that's our starting point, is to get brothers around you, not just for a tribe, not just to feel like you have belonging, but that you have people who hold up a mirror of God's truth in your life. And then that will remind you of who you are, and that will unfold the rest.
Okay, two last things, and they're simple, but I was filling up with gas a few weeks ago, and I just peered over to the other side, and somebody else was filling up. I'm like, I recognize that hairdo. It was Rustin. I'm like, oh, hey, I know that hair. He's like, is that you? Yeah. I said, hey, I'm like, it's funny that I ran into him because I had just thought this 3 or 4 days. I'm like, Rustin, I was just thinking about you. Why don't you ever speak at Forge? He's like, I don't know. I'd love to. I'm like, oh, great. I have nothing to do with the programming. Yeah. I'm like, why doesn't the most manly guy on campus talk to a bunch of dudes? Just a thought. Yeah. The other thing was...
Rustin will appreciate that comment. The invitation and the compliment.
Shoot, now I lost the second one. Oh, man. Oh, it's an invitation to you. I was talking to Steve about this a while ago. But I'm like, because Mike Terlizzi does a great job of sitting with guys at the Forge. I'm like, I would love to see you sit and join us. Yeah. Not just me. Yeah. But Mike has always offered so much wisdom, practical wisdom. Yeah. And I think you would offer that too. And I think just to come be with us.
Yeah, man.
Would be awesome. Just here and there.
Well, good
Just
news.
a thought.
I am doing that.
Yes!
We're such a large community now in many ways that it's going to take me a long time to rotate through everybody.
Of course.
But no, it has been my practice since I've got here to find ways to sit at the tables, to listen in. But my role in all that, I mean, you're a table leader, Joe. My role in that is not to take the mantle of the discussion, but to watch, to listen, to participate, and to cheer you guys on. So I'm in.
Good. Yeah, it's just, if nothing else, it's just, I don't know, guys like it when the head guy's there. It's just like, oh, that's neat.
Good leadership gets down on the ground level and leads kind of with people.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the invitation.
And I mean, with so much Bible knowledge that you have, like Charlizzi is good with that too. Like, there's a lot of guys at the table that may not have solid biblical background and understanding. That the interjection of Paul says this, or Abraham and Isaac did this, or this, the Israelites did this. Their heart was bad. God only wanted their heart. Like, sometimes that, it's like, oh, I didn't think about it. Awesome.
Totally.
Just a thought.
Yeah, man. I love it.
Hey, thank you very much. This was fun for me.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. You bet.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Forge Podcast.